Welcome to this episode of Preventing People Problems, brought to you by the HR department. Today we'll be discussing the key considerations for you as a small business owner in hospitality. Hello and welcome to the Preventing People Problems podcast. I'm Tracey Hudson, and in today's episode we are talking all things hospitality and HR. And today I've got with me two brilliant people, Debra Spurway and Vickie Shears. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Debra, introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, Tracey, I've been in the world of HR for probably 30 years. I'm delighted that 17 years ago I set up the HR department, took the big step forward, and throughout my years I quite like socialising, so I've worked with a huge amount of hospitality providers.
You've got a tough life, Debra. Tough life.
Very tough, yeah. Trying out these beautiful restaurants, clubs and cocktail bars has been a chore.
Yeah, and I'm sure you work really, really hard.
Absolutely.
Vickie, hi.
Hiya. So my name's Vickie Shears and I work with you, Tracey.
You do?
And my background is 36 years in hospitality. In fact, last week I celebrated 36 years since I left home and moved to Cambridge at the age of 18.
Oh, wow.
To go and work in a hotel in Cambridge, a 4-star hotel. So my background in hospitality is predominantly restaurants, bars, 5-star hotels, luxury hotels. And in 2014, I decided to buy a sandwich shop in Delhi in Leamington Spa, and ran that business for 5 years as a small business employer, so I can come at it from two sides of the coin.
And you built an amazing business because it's got such a reputation still.
Yeah, it has.
So well done. That's a really good achievement. Right, so we're talking hospitality and HR. So Debra, HR expert, what are the basics that hospitality businesses need to be thinking about?
So, as with all types of businesses, you just need your platform of employment documentation, because that is what you will be basing your decisions upon. As we look at hospitality, we have to intertwine and link our employment documentation into our health and safety, our internal processes. We have to consider our license. If you are selling alcohol, your license in the hospitality industry is extremely important to you, and having policies and procedures about how we have to do things. Somebody needs to check that you're old enough to buy a drink. Somebody needs to be trained and be given the courage to do that. So the fundamentals are, let's have our employment documentation fit for purpose. Then we look at our internal processes. Are they putting a firework into a lovely cocktail as they're walking through a bar full of people? So we've got our own sort of risk assessments that go along with that. And if we want people to progress from a bartender to a bar manager, how do we give them a bit of a training journey to bring their career? Hospitality is a fast-moving business.
Yeah. People
come and go. A lot of people left London in the pandemic. 60% of those people were actually working in hospitality. So we like finding people in hospitality that we can nurture and grow to take on the management roles of the future.
So in London then, are they struggling? Is hospitality struggling to recruit people? Did those 60% of people that left come back?
No, people do struggle to recruit people into the industry. They have to use lots of different types of talent to be able to produce what they can. Interestingly, we'd all think London's really busy in the summer. London's obviously more busy in and around November and Christmas time, because a lot of people leave London to go on holiday in the summer. So they're using students, university students. Then we talk about the different types of employment contracts. People say, well, I'm going to have them on 0 hours, or I'm going to have them as a casual member of staff. And this comes to then defining what hours people are going to work and what hours you're guaranteeing people. You set up your rota, you give it out a month, couple of weeks in advance. You expect those people to turn up because you're going to remunerate them and they've got a commitment to you. But the different ways in which hospitality has to employ its talent to deliver its service means that they need to take the right advice on what are the right contractual terms for those particular people.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about, it's something that we talked about before we came in here, but chefs, and they create their own recipes. So what do you do as a business owner in hospitality to protect yourself?
Well, I've seen it at two different levels, where you've got the executive chefs who will be planning and creating menus in, you know, larger restaurant establishments, very well-known establishments. And then you've got the bakery, the artisan bakery, where somebody's working with your artisan breads, how we make them, what our ingredients are. So that's really your intellectual property. So again, you do need to consider the people who could whip your menu or your recipe and take it down the road and start serving exactly the same thing there that you've become incredibly popular for. So you need to look at the controls and your contractual controls around, the recipes are your intellectual property, even if created by somebody else.
So I imagine it's like any other industry, that you struggle to recruit, you struggle to retain. So culture's going to be, I imagine, quite important, or is it not as important because you've got quite transient staff?
I think it is really important, and Vickie did share with us something just now about, and if you work in hospitality and if you've worked in a kitchen and you've seen the kitchen run, these people are working incredibly hard in smaller environments. It's incredibly hot, and you've got
massive pressure.
You've got massive pressure. We want to turn over 3 covers tonight, and services in play as to what might happen in the kitchen. So Vickie, I think you should share a little bit about your experience when you worked in a kitchen.
Yeah, well, quite an experience. So I trained for 3 years at Catering College to be a chef. At the age of 18, I wanted to be the first female head chef in a 5-star London hotel. That was what got me out of bed in the morning.
Wow.
My first job was in a 4-star hotel in Cambridge. I went into the kitchen with a brigade of 30 male chefs and me. And I have to say that dream died within 3 months, just because of the way I was treated really badly. Didn't want a woman in the kitchen. So they were started off with the go to the stores and ask for a long wait, and they're just standing there for a while. I was sent to go and get a leg of salmon, and of course, aiming to please, I went off to get a leg of salmon and was just the butt of everyone's jokes, to when they realised that I had a little bit of tenacity and I wasn't going anywhere, to being put in the pig swill bin at the end of each shift. So sort of 3 months in, I went to the general manager and kind of said, it's not for me. Didn't tell tales, didn't speak to anybody about what had kind of happened, but just said, can I go front of house, please? And that was a dream that kind of died a death at that point in time.
So you went front of house in the same business?
Yeah, I did. And I stayed there for another sort of year and a half, and then kind of diversified my career into a bit of training, because I really believed in the industry, that hospitality is such a fantastic industry to work in, and there are people that actually see it as their life's dream to work in hospitality, and you also have to balance that between the people, as Debra said, that are just doing it to earn a bit of money while they're at university. So I wanted to influence the next generation of sort of chefs, of front of house staff, by kind of going into sort of modern apprenticeships and delivering training to the future stars. So kind of diversified, but I think that itch for me was what led me to then go and buy my own business in 2014, because I still love cooking, I love feeding people. And when you were mentioning about the intellectual property rights, one of the things that I ensured when I sold my business in 2019, that the names of my sandwiches and the recipes for all the cakes and pastries I used to make were all kind of tied into that, and there was value in that information.
In how your business was valued, okay.
Yeah, because goodwill is one thing, but, you know, they were buying everything. They were buying the brand and the quirky names of the sandwiches and, like I say, the recipes. So it does kind of link into what Debra was saying.
And you've said before, whilst you successfully sold your business, congratulations on doing that. I know you've mentioned to me before that you had a problem when you were selling your business.
Yeah, I did. So I started off first year, I thought I could run it by myself, 7-day week. You know, you're preparing fresh food. When it sells, you've got to then remain at the end of the day to recook so you can open the next day. So making all my cakes and pastries. And I started to employ people, and I knew that I had to give people contracts, but I didn't want to spend the money on getting an HR professional to do that work for me.
Yeah.
So I think I've done what I'm speaking to business owners now are doing right across the country. You either Google and download a contract off the internet, or you use one from a previous job that you had. And so I have to say that that's what I did. Kind of plagiarised another organisation's contract. And I never had any problems with the team. You know, I grew the team to 6 staff and they were all great. But when I came to sell the business and we started looking at TUPE transferring those employees over to the new business owner, they did the due diligence work, looked at the contract and said, why would we agree to 6 months company sick pay for somebody that's on an 8-hour contract? And I was like, oh, did I leave that in? So that did kind of bite me a little bit. And I have to say that cost me quite a lot of money to put that right, because we had to consult with the staff. We had to get them to agree different terms. Luckily, they were all amenable because they wanted to keep their job. But yeah, a lesson learned. And when I'm talking to business owners now about the services that we offer, it's really important to make them understand that it's not just about the here and now. You're going to have an exit strategy and you need to be thinking about that. So really important to get those foundations in place at the beginning.
Yeah, brilliant. Good. Thank you for that. So still thinking about the basics, can we talk about tips? Because I know this is this is quite a key topic.
It's been an interesting one from a sandwich bar, a cafe, where you go in and get a sandwich and you have a cup of tea and you leave your £1 coin on the side of your saucer, and then somebody puts it in a jar behind the counter, and then at Christmas they all share a little bit out amongst themselves. I think the key thing about tips, this comes into play when we're looking at service charge. So we go and we have a delicious meal and they put on their, say, 12.5%, and you go, yeah, that was good, I'll pay my 12.5%. So over the years, the service charge payment belonged to the employer, and they would share and distribute this amount, and they would keep certain amounts back for training and development and other requirements to assist and improve.
Okay.
So the HMRC don't receive national insurance on service charge, so it's separately done as part of people's pay, and this means that they will look and see that people are operating what is called a trunk system properly in their environments. And in 2023 there was gaining royal assent was the TIPS bill, which is TIPS bill 2024. This will have a more interesting impact on the fact that if you are holding that money, not paying national insurance on it, then the employees must receive all of this. It's big out there in hospitality. It has been talked about for a few years now, and people have already started to make the change to move that forward in a positive way. But they will no longer be able to keep bits back for other things. They will have to be paying it and sharing it with the staff. I mean, I've had, as we would know, people pay service, and we like the service that we've had and who's tended to our table, so we swing a bit of cash across to them. In hospitality, people still think that the employer can say you've got to share all of that. That's not right, because it's gone to that person. So effectively they should declare tax on what could be deemed as earnings, but it isn't until it's starting to be in a process that is being shared or divvied out. So the TIPS bill is more about the service charge and the trunks, more than having a cup of tea and a piece of cake and who gets the £2 coins on the side of the saucer that we might leave.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting factor, and employers in hospitality really do need to to have that right, because smaller hospitality establishments won't put service charge on. They hope people will get tips, but how are you actually sharing those tips out? Are you involved in that? Are you actually making those tips taxable and NI-able because you're taking it through a process that's not part of service charge that you would need to have a trunk master responsible for? And those in hospitality hearing this will understand that.
But I mean, how does it, as you say, you know, you might tip somebody £20, £10, whatever it is, and you're giving it to a person. How does an employer know that they're receiving all of that cash?
They shouldn't really know, because unless they've got a system in place,
they wouldn't
that
know.
They have to declare it. They wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
So it's only the service charge, because it goes on to the credit cards. Not many people pay their bill in cash now, do they?
No, that's
and
true.
Most people don't actually take cash now.
Yeah.
So, lots to be thought about, probably continually evolving, because it's not putting money into the coffers of the country if it's exempt from something. So they will take more notice to see that people are operating the systems properly.
And structurally, thinking about business owners, managers, who is the person who is actually keeping on top of this stuff? Because there's so much, you mentioned licenses already, there's so much in hospitality for you to keep on top of. Who's doing that in smaller businesses? I get in chains, you've got layers of management that are doing this, but in small businesses, in independent restaurants, cafes, bars, how are they doing this?
Well, they would be doing it as any smaller owner-managed business, because they're looking at their insurances, they've got to get their licence, you know, they've got to be keeping up to date. Our clients are very fortunate, because
I've got you.
I've been dealing with hospitality for years, and I've certainly rolled it out to the teams and fellow people in the HR department. But I think, you know, they're lucky because you share what's coming, and I think the HR department, what we did in the lockdown, we were continually sharing what's coming next. And that's what we've been telling our clients about, the service charge and the trunk. So we can only do so much. We've got a business mind, but, you know, they've got their business plans and what they've got to look at. But I would like to, if I may, just move on to, you know, who is in charge of all of these things. So generally you'll get a business owner, then they'll put in a manager or general manager, and then there'll be assistant managers, there'll be restaurant managers, there'll be bar managers, you know, as you go up the scale for a larger business. And I think what employers should consider is giving people the right tools to undertake their job. It's fast moving. It's the middle of service. We've got customers complaining. We've got the chef bit hot-headed. You know, things aren't going so well in the kitchen. So we've got a lot of pressure. Something happens. How do we deal with something that could be a problem to us employment-wise? It's not the right time to do it then. So what we do for certainly multi-site hospitality is we run something called HR Essentials Training. It's a half-day course, and it gives all of those responsible for people who are on the coalface in the delivery service time, the hot-headed time, the tools to be able to know how to diffuse situations, what they can and can't do and say in certain scenarios, which means that's protecting the business and potentially the license at what could be midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning. So I think if I was a business owner, I'd certainly be looking at how you give roles and responsibilities to people in the environment in which they're working, and make sure that you've given them some training just outside of how to make the cocktails.
Because I imagine there's loads of conduct issues. I mean, you get conduct issues with employees in every business, but in hospitality, there's got to be, I mean, there's a
There's
lot of
so
alcohol.
much that goes on.
Tell us everything, Vickie.
There's so much that goes on. We've had a really busy shift, let's stay behind and let's all have a drink and that kind of thing, and then that becomes the norm. So then that becomes something that isn't supervised by a manager, and then you've got staff going behind the bar and helping themselves. And you know, I've worked in an environment in hotels where we had live-in accommodation, so we had a staff house which was sort of a mile down the road. There was 8 of us that lived in there, and there were
You
times
were one of them?
I was one of them.
Oh, okay.
Naively, one of them. Kept myself to myself very much, but there was a lot of late night parties. There was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of drugs because of the passion. You know, not the passion, the pressure on people that are being asked to do more.
Right.
We used to call them AFDs. I won't say what the F stands for, but it's all day. An AFD shift is an all day shift. And you might be rotated on those constantly, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Oh, you're down Thursday, Friday. We're in desperate need of someone. Can you come in? So before you know it, you've got a workforce of really sleep-deprived, hungover staff that are actually really struggling. And the employer can, on occasion, just turn a blind eye. And you've got the pressure on the staff that, you know, when you talk about things like national minimum wage is that's my wage to do a 40-hour week, but I've just done 87 hours a week for you. Am I getting more holiday because of that? Am I now on £3.20 an hour because of those hours that I'm doing? And it happens up and down the country. And I think going about what you were saying, Deborah, about the pressures on business owners in particular, outsourcing your HR is one less thing to worry about, because in a food business you've got to comply with food safety, health and safety. Ignorance is not a defence in a court of law. If you, like we had with Pret, you know, somebody's died because of your allergens and you have that kind of situation. You know, as a business owner, there is a lot of pressure on you to do the right thing, and it's evenings, weekends, Googling, because you don't know what you don't know. So the people side of things, by actually getting experts in like Deborah that can actually say, you know, we can take that pressure off you because we can make sure you're going to be fully compliant from an employment law perspective, that allows business owners to kind of focus more on growing their business and remaining compliant for everything else they've got to do.
And you talk about pressure of all of that, but then also I'm just thinking, if I'm an owner manager, I'm an employer in hospitality, and I've got people taking drugs because I'm asking them to work such long shifts, how am I sleeping at night knowing that? You know, where's the responsibility there? I mean, I can't believe is that happening, Deborah?
I would say we'd all be fairly naive in the current world that we live in, where we know, because of things like the pandemic and Brexit and various other things, people are under pressure. I mean, as far as drinking is concerned, you know, you have it absolutely right. People say, well, you can have one drink at the end of the shift. Yet when he's had 3 drinks, we want to dismiss him because he shouldn't have had 3 drinks. But on the other side, when he was doing his job, he's allowed to have a drink to encourage the clientele to perhaps drink a little bit more.
So it's about being really clear on the rules.
Very clear on the rules. I mean, drug taking, you know, in our employment contracts in hospitality, it's about you do not come to work under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Like any industry,
like any industry. But, you know, it's much more, it's more accessible, so it should be, you know, a zero tolerance. But it's very difficult with the alcohol if they're working in an environment where they're more exposed to it. You know, there are alcoholics who come out of working in hospitality because they've got, you know, too much access. Really.
Well, that feels like a really sour note to end on, actually. But we've got to. Thank you so much. You're both so knowledgeable, and it's brilliant to have you on. Thank you very much.
A pleasure.
Thank you.